the Starfighter Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Starfighter Podcast. We have a very special episode for you guys today. We're talking about WandaVision episode 5, and it is going to be a spoiler review and breakdown of that episode. But before we get started, if you're not already, please subscribe to our channel. We're almost to 50, and we're plugging away slowly but surely and having a great time with our audience and a great time making these videos. All right, as always, you've got your two co-hosts, Dom and Jake. Jake, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Good, always good to see you. All right, Jake. So we've got the intro. We've got this, we're in the 80s, right? And so we start out with the twins. Obviously, she can't get them to sleep. She tries using her powers, right? And her powers aren't working. And I don't think it's any coincidence, but magically, no pun intended, Agnes shows up, right, to help out. So it's very convenient, right? Talk to me a little bit about this first scene and what you got from it.
Yeah, it was a little interesting to see like her powers doesn't work on them for whatever reason. Maybe they are powerful themselves, but as we go through the episode, we haven't quite seen them use any of the powers that they should have eventually. But it makes for just some fun plot convenience and everything like that. And then, of course, Agnes showing up like she always does, and even more so in this episode, just continues to show up at the most convenient times and everything like that. But no, I was looking forward to just seeing the twins in this episode, and how they did it was pretty awesome. And I think next week is going to be even cooler with that. But yeah, good ways to show.
Agnes is trying to help out. I think Vision is a little bit hesitant towards having her help out, right? And having her pitch in. Well, then there's kind of this awkward moment, right? Where, Agnes is looking at Wanda kind of funny and says, do you want me to, should we just take that again? Or should we just take it from the top? Basically, like kind of giving the impression that her and Agnes are part of this show, and they both have this understanding that Wanda is controlling, almost like Wanda is the director of this show, right? Is that what you got from it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little interesting to see that Agnes is clearly aware of what this all is. We haven't really seen that from another character. They're definitely playing their roles and everything like that, but we haven't seen a character acknowledge that they're actually in a sitcom and everything like that. So I think from the beginning, she's known a lot more than she's let on. Although we will see in the next episode, her kind of powers being awake, or her memory being awakened a little bit more. So how much she knows at this point is kind of unclear, but that was definitely a really weird scene that kind of sets up Vision's whole arc of this episode of trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I got the impression from this scene as well as later on that if we go back a couple episodes where Herb was cutting into the wall, and he almost lets it slip, but he says we're all, and then he stops. I think maybe it could have been we're all actors, possibly something like that. Essentially, I do think that they're all kind of like pawns in this plot that to serve Wanda and what she wants for her life.
Sure, yeah, I can definitely see that.
So anyways, the twins grow up, and I think they magically grow. I think probably we would say like 3 or 4, maybe.
Oh yeah, I was thinking like 5 or something. Seems like almost they were
possibly 5, yeah,
like 5 and 10, like going by 5-year increments almost.
Okay,
so
yeah,
maybe next episode we'll see him at 15. But as we
Right.
see Wanda's trying to stop that. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. And then we get the intro theme song. Did you pick up anything from this?
I did watch a little bit of stuff. I'm not too familiar with 80s sitcoms, but I know it had a lot of ties to different shows, partially ties to Full House in one of the scenes, especially,
Yeah.
which was pretty funny. And then I thought it was hilarious seeing like baby Vision pictures and everything like that. So it was pretty
Oh
funny.
yeah. Yeah, that was cool. Then we cut to Monica talking to the director of Sword. He's making these assumptions basically from what he knows and what he can put together. He's basically calling Wanda a terrorist, and that she has her own agenda, right? And Monica doesn't believe that at all. She doesn't think that Wanda means any harm. Well, then the director kind of counters with this video recording of Wanda breaking into their facility and stealing, I believe it was a sword facility, but breaking into the facility and stealing Vision's corpse, which I thought was pretty crazy reveal. And that actually is not what I was initially thinking. I thought that I think you and I both speculated that maybe she went back to Wakanda, but it looks like either Shield and or Sword, kind of got hold of his body, and so um, that's what happened. She went and stole it from them. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty big reveal and pretty interesting. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, it was interesting to see because it kind of plays into the whole thing about how she's kind of losing her mind, and that's how she looked in the video, and then also when she came out to talk to them later. Um, but no, that was pretty cool to see. It definitely ties back to the comics where all his like parts were spread out and everything like that. Is a scene straight from there. So yeah, that was pretty interesting to see. Now exactly how she brought him to life will still remains to be seen whether the Mind Stone is actually there or not. So
Yeah, because that's one thing that they said. How did she do it without the Mind Stone? Do you have any thoughts about that or
I
speculation?
mean, I wouldn't put her past her to actually be able to create it, although that seems pretty dang powerful, more powerful than anything we've seen towards this point. But already, as we hear them talking about later, that her powers are definitely growing, and they're basically calling her the strongest Avenger straight up. So yeah, that was pretty funny interaction later about her being able to beat Thanos, basically.
Yeah, yeah, her and Captain Marvel, right? And going along with that point, um, I thought it was interesting too how the director asks if she resisted, when Wanda used her powers on her, and she said that it was like this overwhelming feeling of grief, and it felt like drowning. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting to hear her say that. It kind of goes along with um, what Vision's coworker said about it being like painful, whatever is
Right.
happening to him, like all the mind control is actually bringing him pain. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that it's leading towards Wanda not caring and almost turning evil in that way if she doesn't care that she's hurting all these people.
The twins bring home this dog. Again, Agnes conveniently shows up with a doghouse. So again, Agnes knows, more than what she originally was giving off. Um, her and Wanda could be in cahoots or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, she shows up with this doghouse. Wanda uses her powers to make the dog collar in front of her, even though Agnes may not have noticed. Vision definitely notices this, and he's concerned about it because before they had been going along with their life and trying to hide their powers from people and trying to be, more cautious about those things. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of going that way where she's basically telling him he doesn't need to hide his face or anything like that. Um, I don't know the reasoning why. It just seems like she's not concerned about that anymore. She's not afraid. Maybe she feels more in control of their life there and everything like that, even though it's only been a few days
Right.
technically. So yeah,
Yeah, I
that
believe
is
it's
kind of
9
interesting.
days.
Yeah, so it's not been long, but she definitely also trusts Agnes a lot more than anybody. So that's maybe kind of part of it, is she has some sort of connection to her where she's not afraid of her finding out the truth.
Tell me about your thoughts on, them going into the lab and, firing those bullets at, Monica's clothes. What did you pick out from that, if anything?
Yeah, I think we might have discussed a little bit um, on our stereo call, the last one, that her reality warping is not just contained to the hex. So everything that she changes can change for real. So that was a kind of a more confirmation like that. And then everybody in Sword is learning this as well. And they did use that information to kind of make their way back in. Um, so it was interesting to see how they were able to kind of make their way back in, although it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to again. But I have enjoyed the Sword experience on that side, even though
Yeah, me too.
I do like it more when it's actually inside Westview. But those three characters actually work pretty well together, and I think Monica's been kind of a fan favorite at this point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light on this, but that transition into finding out, like you were saying about how her reality bending powers work, and then to them going and using that war drone. Like, what's the connection there? Because she says that we need to use something that doesn't need to be changed. And so I guess it was a little bit confusing to me. Again, maybe it's just going right over my head, but maybe it's a little bit confusing because, you think back to like episode 1 or 2 with the helicopter. Like, wasn't that a drone? But did you have anything to maybe
Yeah, it
add to that?
seems like they were just trying to make things fit in with that timeline. So like when she went in with her Kevlar suit or whatever, it got changed to 70s clothes or whatever. So if they brought in a drone that was 80s technology, which is obviously pretty advanced, but I think it was Stark Tech on the side of it. So then
Okay,
it wouldn't be warped upon entering because it does fit in that reality. So that's basically what I got from it.
gotcha. Yeah, great points. Yeah, thanks for shedding some light on that. So then we got Vision and Norm and their conversation. Take me through this conversation that they have. And again, the suspense is really starting to build here, and we're finding out a lot more things when it comes to the overall plot. And um, Vision is really discovering what's going on.
Yeah, it was interesting. It didn't touch on it too much of how they got that email through to them, but they did receive that email from Sword that kind of triggered everything. And then it was kind of weird to hear them all chant it and read it basically, which we
Right.
haven't heard them really do since the For the Children thing in episode 2.
Hmm.
But that was definitely interesting, and Vision is basically losing his mind over trying to figure out what's going on. But no, I thought it was really interesting with Norm. I've liked his character a lot so far. I think he's pretty funny. But to hear him freaking out about his sister and everything, um, I saw somebody pointed out that on his case file that they have on Sword, it mentioned something about him having a mental breakdown about his sister. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
maybe it's something that's happened before or something like that. But there's something strange about that there. Um, but yeah, saying that he was in pain from the mind control was pretty revealing. But then again, he just says you have to stop her. Of course, like leaving out the pronoun, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's trying to lead us to believe that it's Wanda who he has to stop. But I don't think that's where they're going with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to that point, they leave it blank right there, and I think that it could be Agnes instead of Wanda. But
Yeah,
we'll see. It's tough because, again, you go back to the beginning of our episode, and Agnes clearly knows what Wanda wants. She knows that, again, she's kind of like the director in a way. But I don't know. Is that maybe Agnes is the producer of the show? You know,
yeah, I feel like that's almost too obvious at this point. I thought we'd be seeing more of Dottie, but we haven't seen her in a few
I
episodes.
thought so too. Yeah.
I mean, after last week's episodes where her case file didn't appear on the wall of known people in the town, that was kind of a giveaway. It seemed like Dottie was the first one to say for the children, and so it's like that
Yeah.
was almost her implanting that idea. And then she was also the one who would say something and then everybody would chant it back, like she was almost controlling what they were saying. I mean, it's just a little strange we haven't seen her in a few episodes. Maybe next week she'll come back, but there's not that many episodes to kind of bring her character arc around.
Now the twins are playing with Sparky, the dog, and they're wondering where Vision is. You know, isn't it Saturday? Wanda says, no, it's Monday. Like, Dad's not supposed to be working right now. Like, what's going on? Well, he needs, a distraction right now. She tells him that, sometimes they're not always on the same page. He needs a distraction. She also gives this speech. Oh, and something that I was listening to, like, another breakdown and doing a little bit of research, but basically we see in these episodes, through this reality that Wanda makes, she's kind of like working through her own crisis a little bit, like her own problems that she's had in the past. And so there's some parallels here. Really interesting. I don't know if you caught this, but this conversation that she's having with Billy and Tommy, the two boys are dressed in red and blue, kind of like Tony and Steve. And like this parallel or this analogy was kind of like Sparky is supposed to be Bucky, and how she had to like kind of take sides and deal with all of that. And there's a couple of like callbacks to Civil War and other films like that. I don't know if you caught any of that or what you thought about this particular scene.
No, I didn't catch anything about that. That's interesting. Yeah, the only thing that stood out to me is she definitely looks like she can't even control her kid's mind. Like her powers do not work at all.
Right.
So it seems like it's going to become a problem because she can still control Vision, but they don't buy what she's putting out there and are going to question it. And they seem to even sort of understand the reality better than Wanda does herself, because sometimes she falls back into the character role, whereas the kids are just themselves in full control.
Mm-hmm. She's telling the boys about, family, how family is forever. And they ask her, do you have a brother? And she says, I do, but he's somewhere very far away. And that makes me sad sometimes. And then we start to hear this noise coming from outside. The dog starts to get scared. And again, another one of these moments where the suspense is starting to build. We know we're working our way up to something. And it's the drone coming for Wanda. Monica is trying to connect with Wanda again, try to find some common ground with her. I think I told you a little bit about, some research that I did about Sword and how they're more of an aggressive counterpart of Shield. And so I've been seeing some of that in just like some of the way that they react, especially how the director reacts to certain situations. And I think we saw that here. Oh, first we saw it when he was so quick to make these assumptions, right? And he's already kind of built up, this attitude and uh, this viewpoint of how he sees Wanda. But now we're seeing it here, where Wanda starts to take control of the drone, but Monica says try and reconnect so that she can gain control back, and the director says no, just take your shot, fire. She's like, it's not armed, but clearly, he kept that a secret and it was armed. What do you think about this scene? How that all played out?
Yeah, they're really making this guy to almost be the bad guy, right? He's definitely not listening
Oh,
to
you
anything
think so, huh?
Monica says. I mean, maybe not straight up evil, but just like not the person who should be in charge of this operation, you know? Even after everything Monica went through, she still believes that Wanda's good and everything like that. I mean, he had no care in the world that she was an Avenger. He basically just listed her anti whatever thing that she was doing with her brother and all the protests before that.
Yeah.
Maybe he has a thing against Avengers in general or something like that. But yeah, he just went through his own plan and clearly didn't work out.
Right. I'm not sure. So you really think that he'll become a villain?
I don't know. Like, would it surprise you if he was Hydra? Like, Hydra's always infiltrating Shield and Sword and everything like that. So it could be something like that, sort of. But I don't know exactly if he could be a villain because he'd have to have power in some sort of way, which still remains to be seen. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see his character come out, and I think it'll basically lead to Monica and Jimmy and Darcy having to do their own plan to try to save everybody rather than his aggressive plan.
I think it would kind of surprise me a little bit if he turned out to be the villain, just because of what we know, the little we know about Sword, and they're supposed to be good, but like you said, it wouldn't be unheard of because Hydra has infiltrated Shield, so it's not like they couldn't infiltrate Sword as well. They definitely could. Well, now we see Wanda comes through the hex to confront the soldiers and everyone, and she tosses the drone back to them. Take me through this scene again. I think this is probably definitely the best scene of the show, in my opinion. Oh, well, I guess the ending is pretty good too. We'll get to that.
Yeah,
But talk
no,
to me about this.
this was definitely cool. This made it really feel like she has a split personality because that's just not how she really is when she's inside of the town and anything like that. And then also, she does have her slight Slakovian accents
I was
back,
gonna say that. Yeah,
which was great. I mean, it was pretty heavy in Age of Ultron, but I think just the hint of it is nice to
yeah. I
bring
thought it
that
was
back.
pretty. I thought it was pretty good here. I kind of wish that she could just pick one though.
Yeah, it is kind of strange to go back and forth. But definitely this more aggressive side of her is also how she used to be when she lived
Oh,
in
okay.
Sokovia and everything like that. So it
Good
might be
point.
bringing out some of those feelings because obviously
Good
she was
point.
working with Ultron and everything like that. So it's almost that side of her that's split. But I did uh like I saw one person point out that the move of turning the guns back on the
Dang it!
director
I wanted to
was
bring this out.
I don't know if you got the same point, but that's like what Magneto did in X-Men, and it was just
Yeah.
like this same thing exactly. So that was pretty cool to see.
Well, Magneto's one of my favorite villains, if not my favorite villain. But yeah, that was totally like X-Men 1. Yeah, that was an
Yeah,
awesome
for
scene.
sure.
Yeah, so she turns the guns on them, basically saying this is your warning right here. This is your one warning. I don't bother you, you don't bother me. I've already had, someone take away everything that I wanted. This is what I want. This is what I want to do right now. This new life that I've made, having this feeling of normality, and really, again, getting the life that she always wanted, and then some, with being married and having kids. So yeah, she walks back into the hex. It also looks like maybe it got reinforced, and maybe this goes back to your point earlier where she's feeling more comfortable, she's feeling more in control. Sometimes you see her losing that control, and sometimes you see her power building too. So it's very back and forth.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Monica try to reason with her. It's almost like she was appealing to the other side of Wanda because when she's in there and not thinking, she is kind and trusting to people and everything like that. Um, And she was kind of trying to make the point that she should have known that she was with Sword and everything like that deep down, but she kind of ignored it until something actually stood out to trigger it. So that was kind of interesting to hear. I think Monica's got the right idea that there's a different side of her that can come through for sure. But yeah, it does seem like the wall, you probably won't get sucked in. You might get pushed out if you try to end her right now. That's kind of what it seems like.
Right. Take me through this. Well, it's a short commercial, but take me through your thoughts on this. Lagos, which goes back to Civil War again, and this problem that she had trying to save people, but really causing this traumatic event.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. When you make a mess, you didn't mean to, right?
Yeah, kind of hit you over the head with it a little bit.
Right? Yeah, it's funny though, but yeah, it was interesting because like the first few commercials are sort of her fears and the traumatic things that happen in her life. But this one is a little bit different because it's was a mistake of hers. It seems like all the commercials are now leaning towards everything that she wished she could forget, basically. So whether that be Ultron or her brother's death or something, I'm sure we'll see something like that in the later commercials. But I did see one thing that somebody pointed out, that each commercial sort of represents an infinity stone. So the first one with the toaster had like an appearance of a face with like the knobs, and the light was right in the middle of the forehead, like the mind stone. And then the second one was a watch, so time. The third one was the tesseract, which is space, was with the
soap,
bath
right?
soap or whatever. Yeah, so that was tesseract. And then this one, the red liquid, like the reality stone morphs into.
Okay.
So I guess we'll see next week what they come up with.
I mean, sorry, yeah, that was my initial thoughts, especially with the Hydra soap. Like that's immediately I thought it looked like the Tesseract.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't really think about it until like you see, oh yeah, definitely the red liquid, like that's almost a giveaway for reality. But yeah, it was a pretty good commercial. Did they change the kids in this? I swear they looked much different than they did in a previous episode, previous commercial.
Change the kids in what?
As like the actors for her kids or whatever.
Well, I think when they age, right?
I think it might have just been an aging, yeah, because they definitely look different. But
yeah,
the woman stays the same, and I think she might actually be a person, a real person. Maybe her, like I think we've mentioned before, like her parents or something.
Oh,
like
right,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, to see the same person over and over again is pretty interesting.
So now the twins are trying to find Sparky again. I've said it a couple times already. Agnes appears when there's a problem, although this time she can't really help because it seems like Sparky's dead and she's holding the dog, kind of explaining that he got into the bush or whatever. Talk to me a little bit about this scene.
Yeah, there's a lot to try to take away from this.
Right.
So I thought it was first of all stupid how Sparky died, but apparently that's how Sparky dies in the comics. Is he eats poisonous leaves, which sounds ridiculous, but apparently that's what happened. Because at first I'm like, oh, she killed that dog, right? I mean, it's possible. It's still possible.
It is.
But what I kind of thought was it was interesting how involved Agnes is with the kids. It seems like she's always there at critical times. So she first of all was spraying them with stuff when they were babies. She said it was like lavender, right? But that was kind of
it was weird. Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, the boys aged up, right? And then when they find the dog, she conveniently like brings them over the dog house so they are allowed to keep the dog. But that means again that the boys would have to be older to have a dog, and so they age up again. And now the dog is dead, which again triggers the boys to want to grow up again, which Wanda prevents. But it seems as she was there for like all three moments was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. I didn't really catch that until you mentioned it. So now Wanda shows up. Like you said, she tries to keep them from, that urge to age and kind of move on from, the pain that they're feeling at the moment. Basically a pretty hypocritical conversation because, she's telling them these things that she's basically done as far as, kind of letting what happens happen, not trying to reverse things, not trying to stop death because the boys are trying to get her to bring Sparky back. And something interesting that happens is Agnes asks, like, you can do that? Was that genuine, do you think? Or do you think Agnes knows that she can?
I don't know. It's like maybe that's a point. Maybe Agnes wants her to bring someone back for her, to want to get wanted to do that. But
maybe so.
Yeah, she's so hard to figure out. I think we'll learn a lot more about kind of who she is next episode. But yeah, she's got to have some sort of motive. It's just a matter of time until we realize what it is.
Right. So the boys aren't really getting the point. They say, bring him back. Vision comes in, bring who back? They talk to him about, Sparky and catch him up to speed. We go off to our next scene. This was a pretty crazy scene, I thought, too. This argument between Wanda and Vision gets really heated. Vision just can't, stand to be controlled anymore. He's telling her he's not going to let her do this anymore. You can't control me like you're doing all of them. And it all starts with him relating what happened to Norm, his conversation with Norm earlier at work, and how he was able to talk to him out, like, beyond her oversight, beyond her controlling him, and how he was in pain, and how he has a family, and basically how wrong this is that, Wanda's doing all these things. And they both get into, these fighting positions. Again, remind me of Civil War when they kind of faced off for a moment, which that wouldn't go well for Vision in the end. I think we know that. What do you take away from this scene?
Yeah, I thought it was cool how it started at first with her trying to roll credits to just get it over with.
Oh yeah.
And then they leave the kitchen and it kind of does one of those frame skips. So it's almost like that part, the finale wasn't parts of the show almost, but then like it's everybody watching this because Darcy does see at the end with Pietro. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what she kind of omits from the broadcast or not. Because she just wants them to sit on the couch and watch TV and not be the closing frame of the show, which is pretty funny. But it's, again, it feels like she has this one side, and her side at that point was not knowing what's going on. Like she was literally asking, it's like, do you think I could do all of this, make everybody do what I want? And it really felt like she didn't think she was doing it herself. And then Vision, on the other hand, he apparently doesn't remember anything about himself. Obviously, he wouldn't remember the events of Thanos killing him, but anything about his life in general, how he was created, like who he is. And obviously, that'd be concerning for him and why he's kind of having a freak out.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to tell. I will say both Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, I think this was some of their best acting in this argument, in this particular scene. And it's really hard to tell when she's being genuine and when, she's kind of lying to him, stringing him along with this story that she's making up. Sometimes it did seem like she was being sincere, like you were saying, I'm not doing all of these things. And also, she says something like, it didn't start out this way, with her knowing or her being aware. I lean towards that being a lie too, because of that scene that we saw where Wanda steals his corpse, right? Like that leads you to believe it was always premeditative, right?
Yeah, I think it is but then it also isn't because her new persona doesn't believe she's doing it, but she actually is. So she's like literally really erased it from her mind that she did all these things to basically live with what she's done. And we see that through like the commercials, her trying to basically sort of downplay the worst parts of her life as little commercials and everything like that. But yeah, she's basically pushed that part of her life and every wrong thing she's done out of her mind.
It would be a crazy twist going along with your point previously about the director if he made up that recording. You know what I mean? And then again, like if it did shift to where, Hydra comes out of all of this and basically, yeah, it's just really hard to say. I mean, we are starting to piece some stuff together, but then they keep, throwing us a curveball here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Like you wouldn't think that Wanda would knowingly, like, where all the people went from the town. Who knows at this point? But you don't think she'd knowingly erase all of them or put them somewhere else in some other reality. And that's another question: is where are they? It's with the final scene. It seems like she is tapping into the multiverse, which obviously leads to her being in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So she puts all those people in a parallel world of a different Westview or Eastview? Like, is that where they all are? Because you wouldn't think that they'd be dead or whatever like that, but it's still a question as to where they are. And even Vision questions it at the end, asking why there's no children in the town.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, and like maybe maybe she knows what she's doing. Maybe she justifies it more so with adults than her controlling a group of children. I do think that she's in control to a degree, but also it seems like she hasn't completely lost like all of her moral values, because otherwise she could have taken out the director, no problem earlier on when she, forced all the soldiers to turn against him for a second. We're going to find out, but we get a knock at the door as they're, still trying to hash out this problem, and Vision's really not having Wanda's story. We get a knock at the door. Wanda says, I didn't do that. She opens the door and we get this awesome reveal. I will say, first thoughts from the back of his head, it looked like the original Quicksilver, but we knew that Evan Peters was going to show up eventually, and we didn't for sure know that it was going to be Quicksilver, because a lot of people were saying that he could be playing somebody else. But I'm really glad that it was, and I thought his outfit looked great. I thought his attitude was really good too, and definitely brought back his attitude and persona a little bit. Even though it was kind of like this 80s take, still was definitely who we have seen and come to know in some of the Fox X-Men movies. How do you like this scene?
Oh yeah, it was great. So we definitely saw through this episode her talking about her brother at one point to her twins, whereas episode 3 she tells Monica, I did have a brother, but then in this episode she says, I do have a brother. And so it's almost like what she believes and puts out there comes true, and she doesn't even understand herself that she's affecting the reality around it. And then obviously when Sparky's dying, telling her kids, telling her that you said family's forever, and then this happens, which was really cool. But yeah, it was awesome to see him. I definitely believe at this point that she took him from the Fox X-Men universe, and now he's here. Whether or not he's staying, I hope he does. He was one of the best characters from sort of the newer Fox X-Men movies, so that'd be really cool. And then Darcy see it and everything that he was basically recast is pretty funny.
I was going to mention that too. Like, is that the case? Is he being recast as him, or is it actually him from another dimension?
Yeah, so they are.
I guess we don't
her
know for sure, right?
Yeah, her kids are basically saying that she can bring back the dead, but it doesn't really seem like she can. Obviously, Vision's a synthezoid, so it's not the same. And then she wouldn't bring back the dog or anything like that. And then she didn't bring back her brother. She had to find a loophole, basically, and it seems like take somebody else from a different reality who is the equivalent. That's what it seems like to me.
Okay.
But it was really cool to see him kind of show up acting like the Fonz, basically. And so he's completely under the control since he got here. It'll be really interesting to see how much he's in it for the next few episodes. I think.
You think he's under her control right now?
Oh yeah, just he's acting like he's in the 80s basically. Just when he shows up, it was pretty funny. But
I
it'll be
almost
interesting
think.
to see. Yeah,
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I almost think that maybe he has his own agenda and maybe he's not under control, but um, it's most likely that she's got him, under her spell or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think from like the trailers for the show, obviously next week is the Halloween episode, but before going into the show, we didn't know that the kids were going to age up, and we never saw a Quicksilver or anything. Like he could be in
Right.
as a series regular from this point on, which would be really cool because I think he'd be a great addition.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I mentioned it before, but I feel like he's definitely an underrated character, um, Marvel character, X-Men character.
For sure.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Now can she just recast her dad as Michael Fassbender, please? Like that'd be so great.
We'll get right back to that. Any final thoughts of this episode? I think this might be my favorite episode so far. I do like how this one in particular, before it was like most of our episodes were stuck in one era. And then last week's episode where they, interrupt this broadcast or program, we got it all in like a modern day TV series like we know today. But this one kind of blends both. They go back and forth between this old, 80s era to our time, and go back and forth. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I like how they're doing it now, and I'm guessing it'll stick that way too. But yeah,
Right.
I feel like the episodes are just keep getting better. I mean, more characters, more reveals, and everything like that. Not that I disliked the sitcom-ness of it, but it is getting less and less. But it's in a good, gradual way that I wasn't sick of it in the beginning. Like the first episode was like 99% sitcom with a couple of things in there, but how they're doing it has been really good, and it's still holding up and being funny and interesting. And yeah, I think it's been great.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that will basically, wrap up our review on the episode. But to your point earlier about, Michael Fassbender, last thing I wanted to discuss with you is some speculation and some theories about something that Elizabeth Olsen said. I don't know if you saw this article recently, but she said that WandaVision is going to have a big cameo that will rival Luke Skywalker's in The Mandalorian. And I feel like that's definitely one that comes to mind. I've also heard that it could be I believe it's Ian something, but the original Magneto, the older Magneto.
Sure.
Did you have any more thoughts on that?
I wouldn't bring him in because man, that guy is like days away from death. He is so old. But Michael Fassbender would be great. Yeah, he's been great in everything he's in. But
yeah, I think he's a really good actor, though. The older one, they both are. They're both really good.
Oh sure, yeah. No, he's been around the block. That's for sure. Sir Ian McKellen, that's his name. You got to add the sir there.
Right.
But who the big cameo could be was a hint dropped by Monica in this episode where she says she knows an aerospace engineer.
I've heard about that too, yeah.
Which a lot of people took to be Reed Richards.
Hmm.
That's kind of his job, which the Fantastic Four was almost hinted about in the previous episode, where they said that they
With the
still had.
radiation.
Oh, they said that they had astronauts that got dusted that were still missing,
Oh,
which, again, them being dusted and them being astronauts in space, how they get their powers and everything like that. That's also a possibility too. Um, I still don't think it's likely to see somebody like Reed Richards in this. I think it'd be more of a known
no,
person, but
because the
we'll see.
producer actually came out and kind of like debunked that, as far as like, because people are starting to make ties between the, what is it, like CMBR or something like that, the
Oh,
acronym for that
the
radiation.
waves. Mhm.
Yeah, they made a connection there which with that, and like you were saying, the Fantastic Four and how they get their powers. And she said it had nothing to do with that, and her story and reasoning seemed pretty legit, but basically saying, it has nothing to do with the Fantastic Four. So I don't know, maybe it's not so much them. Also, it's hard to say that it'll be X-Men as well, because I believe Kevin Feige had said that that was still a few years out before he brings them in. But I mean, technically, you can say he's kind of broken that with
Sure.
Quicksilver being in here already. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, did you want to give me a couple other names that maybe you think could meet that level of Luke Skywalker and Mandalorian? Because that's a big statement.
I could think it could easily be Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, because we
I've heard
know
that. Yeah.
he's involved. They're already in production of making the first or the third Deadpool movie as part of Marvel Studios. So he will be, and that's for sure. I know my brother, when he was on, talked about um, the characters of Nathan Fillion might be playing, which is a possibility as well, because they've
Oh, Wonder Man, right?
they've given hints to Wonder Man and Grim Reaper. So that could be interesting too, and what actors would be playing it. But it's going to be tough because, I mean, you think something would be leaked by now, but if it's really that big, they've done a great job of keeping wraps on it.
I really think that it could be Magneto or Professor X too. I think Charles coming in and and saying that he can help her. Although, again, we talked a little bit about this in a previous episode. Marvel has kind of made a twist on Wanda's character, because she's not supposed to be a mutant in this cinematic universe anymore. So I don't know. I really don't know how it'll all play out, but we know they're going to bring in the X-Men at some point. There's definitely like doors where they could use to bring them in this particular show. Like, there's ways that they could do it here. So I
Yeah,
guess we'll see.
definitely.
I've
Yeah,
also heard
I mean,
Captain America or Iron Man potentially.
I don't know. Like, I think Doctor Strange will come in the last episode, but I wouldn't really call that the same thing because we kind of know they're all connected.
Yeah,
But what I think it's possible we could see Ultron.
I think so too.
He is on the cast sheet,
Oh, is he?
so to be in it. So I mean, it could be anything. It could just be like a flashback or something that we see him. He might show up as a townsperson as the actor. Wouldn't that be cool? Rather than actually
That
as
would be cool.
Ultron,
Hmm.
just how he was reality shifted in that sort of way to make him into a person. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. That's for sure, though.
However, it did seem like, I think Paul Bettany had said something about Elizabeth Olsen's statement, and something like he's going to be excited to like finally work with this character or with this actor. Like, it was someone he hasn't worked with before.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it could be anything. I mean, there's so many characters, but yeah, it'll be cool.
I'm really hoping for Magneto. So
It would be
I
good.
just want the X-Men. They're my favorite. I was telling Alex that's how I initially like really got into just superhero comics and movies in general was the X-Men like original animated TV show. My brother showed me like some reruns of that growing up, and I was just hooked. That was the coolest thing. And that song is killer too.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome series. And that's also on Disney Plus, so you guys need to check that out if you haven't.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's probably going to wrap it up, Jake, unless you had anything else.
Just one quick comment. I think Monica definitely got her powers. We talked about that.
Oh, you do? Okay.
In a previous episode about her being shot out, and maybe this is how she got her powers, because the X-ray came back and it was just black and white blobs, basically, which is her color scheme of her superhero suit as Photon, and they've already dropped the name Photon with her mother being that her nickname.
But I thought she's the next Captain Marvel.
She sort of is. I mean, but obviously Captain Marvel got her powers through the Tesseract. She got her powers through Wanda's warping abilities and everything like that. So
isn't she called Captain Marvel sometimes?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
So at this point, it'd be too soon to have like a second Captain Marvel. I mean, Captain Marvel doesn't even have her second movie yet. But having her be Photon and sort of a more earthly hero, whereas Captain Marvel is who knows where. Which Monica didn't seem to be happy when Captain Marvel's name was brought up. So I probably won't hear anything about that till the Captain Marvel movie, but that'll be interesting to see.
Definitely. Well, it was a great episode, Jake, and great show here discussing WandaVision with you. I want to thank all of our listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and our viewers here on YouTube. Again, if you're not already, please hit subscribe for us. Continue to follow our shows. We're going to break down next week's episode, episode 6, and we're looking forward to that as well. But that'll be all from us today here on the Starfighter Podcast. We'll see you next time.